The film opens in 2010 at the Wello mine in Ethiopia, where miners are digging out an uncut black opal. The camera zooms into the rock, revealing the beautiful gem hidden inside. The movie then shifts to New York City, introducing Howard, who is seen as an opportunistic, fast-talking jeweler working in Manhattan's Diamond District. He's deeply in debt, owing large sums of money to various people, including his brother-in-law, Arno, who works as a loan shark. Despite this, Howard remains confident, always on the lookout for the next big score. He's super pumped when he finally gets his hands on an uncut opal that he's been trying to get for months from a small mining community in Ethiopia. He thinks it's worth about $1 million and plans to sell it at a fancy auction house. At the same time, Damani, who supplies Howard with business and counterfeit watches for a share of the earnings, brings in the well-known basketball star, Kevin Garnett. Howard is thrilled to show KG, as everyone calls him, the opal he just got in. Kevin really likes it and wants to keep it for good luck during his game. Although Howard is hesitant, he allows KG to take the opal, but asks for his championship ring as a guarantee. Without wasting any time, Howard sells the ring to a pawn shop to place a big bet on KG's game that evening, hoping to buy it back with the money he wins. Meanwhile, Phil, Arno's henchman, looking Howard outside of the pawn shop to collect the debt he owes. Howard believes that once he sells the opal, he'll have enough money to pay Arno back. Howard's girlfriend, Julia, works at a jewelry store and stays in his New York City apartment, while his wife Dinah and their 3 kids lead a suburban lifestyle outside the city. Dinah is tired of Howard's neglect and his constant absence from their children's lives, and she plans to tell them about the divorce after Passover. Instead of spending quality time with his kids, Howard is glued to a basketball game, which he ends up winning a bet on, and goes to the city to spend time with Julia. The next day, when it's time for Howard to drop off the opal at the auction house, Damani shows up empty-handed, explaining that KG wants to keep it for his next game. Frustrated, Howard insists on going to see KG to retrieve it, so they make a 2-hour drive away to the location of the game. Damani goes into the locker room, leaving Howard outside, and he ends up having to take a bus back to the city, fuming with anger. At his daughter's school play, Howard spots Phil sitting a few rows behind him. He goes near to him and quickly asks Phil to meet him in the hallway and makes a dash for it, but he gets caught and pulled into the back of Arno's van, where Arno is already in the car. They take away his watch and clothes, and Howard tries to convince Arno that he won a big bet and can pay him back right away. However, Arno reveals that he disapproves of Howard gambling with money he owes him and has already put a stop to the bet. This news leaves Howard heartbroken, and Phil ends up locking him in the trunk of his car, leaving him completely naked. In a desperate situation, he has to call Dinah to come out in the middle of the play to let him out, which completely disgusts her. That night, Damani finally reaches out to Howard to let him know he has the opal, and Howard suggests they meet at a show for the rising artist, The Weeknd. He goes there and sees Julia with the artist, The Weeknd. Howard makes the trek back into the city, but when he arrives, Damani claims he doesn't have the opal and tells Howard to relax, which only makes Howard angrier. Meanwhile, Julia and The Weeknd are in the bathroom doing stupid things, and although The Weeknd is interested in getting romantic, Julia firmly tells him no touching.
No touching.
When Howard finds them together in the bathroom, he confronts The Weeknd and ends up getting them both kicked out of the club. This leads to a massive argument where Julia accuses Howard of ruining a big opportunity for her, and in response, he accuses her of being unfaithful. Julia insists she hasn't cheated, but Howard demands that she leave the apartment. Howard's extended family gathers for Passover at the home of Dinah's father, Gui, where some surprising family dynamics come to light. It turns out that Arno is actually married to Dinah's sister, which creates a bit of awkwardness at the gathering. Despite this tension, Howard excitedly shares news about an opal with Gui and Arno, hinting that once it sells for $1 million, Arno will receive his share. After breaking up with Julia, Howard approaches Dinah, suggesting they think about reconciling and expressing regret for his affair. Dinah, however, finds his proposal amusing and expresses her desire to never see him again. Meanwhile, Julia sends Howard a link to their apartment listing on Craigslist, prompting him to stop by the place before leaving the city. When his son needs to use the bathroom, Howard, following Dinah's advice, takes him upstairs but suggests he use a neighbor's bathroom to avoid running into Julia. To his surprise, he discovers that Julia has left her keys and a note behind. His son, curious about the situation, asks about a hot woman living in the apartment, as the neighbor had mentioned her, leading Howard to instruct him not to discuss it, leaving his son looking disappointed and confused. The next day, KG finally comes to Howard's shop to return the opal and offers Howard $175,000 for it, but Howard insists that it will fetch $1 million at auction, so he can't accept KG's offer and suggests that KG should bid on it himself. Howard doesn't have KG's ring anymore because he pawned it, which makes KG extremely angry, but he leaves, fed up with Howard. Damani storms in, furious that Howard turned down KG's cash offer, and discovers that Howard has been selling all the fake watches he had given him without sharing any of the profits, using the money to cover his gambling debts instead. Frustrated, Damani decides he's had enough of Howard and pours juice into his fish tank before leaving. In a hurry, Howard takes the opal to the auction house, which has been persistently calling him for the item. However, on the day of the auction, Howard is infuriated to find that the auction house values the opal at only $155,000 to $225,000, far from the million he expected. KG shows up to bid on it himself, and since the price has dropped, Howard pleads with Gooey to bid against KG to raise the price, assuring him that he won't have to pay for it. Gooey and KG engage in a bidding war, and Howard pushes Gooey to raise the bid to $200,000, but just before reaching that amount, KG drops out. Howard is in shock and tells Gooey he will repay him once he gets his payout, but now he owes Gooey the fees the auction house deducted. Arno sees everything unfold and confronts Howard outside, leading to Phil giving Howard a severe beating and tossing him into a fountain. Howard walks back into his office, drenched in blood and despair. Julia then enters the back office and finds Howard in tears. In an attempt to lift his spirits, she shows him her new tattoo of his name on her backside. Just then, Howard receives a call from KG, who is ready to pay cash for the opal that Gooey had given him, and he feels a surge of hope. In a moment of desperation, he decides to part with his last treasured item, another championship ring, to retrieve KG's ring from the pawn shop. KG shows up and hands over the cash for the opal, but he really lets Howard have it for how he exploited the African miners to make a profit. Howard tries to defend himself by comparing his strategy to KG's, saying that KG plays to win rather than just break even. He gets KG excited by sharing the gambling odds for the game that night, motivating him to crush the opposing team. Feeling pumped from their conversation, Howard decides to wager all the money KG just gave him, which is $175,000 minus Damani's $6,000 cut, on KG's game. However, since Arno and Phil are waiting in the lobby for their share of the cash, Howard has Julia go to a nearby office, hands her the money through the window, and buys her helicopter ticket straight to the casino. Arno and Phil walk into Harold's office only to discover that the money is missing. They decide to send a thug to the casino to track down Julia while they continue to question Howard. When they realize that Howard doesn't have the cash, they attempt to leave, but Howard traps them in the security vestibule with the magnetic locks. He excitedly tells them that they are on the verge of a huge win and starts the game. Phil, feeling desperate, pulls out a gun and threatens to shoot their way out, but Howard calmly informs him that the glass is bulletproof and that it would only cause them harm. In a tense moment, Phil makes a threatening phone call while Howard contacts Dinah, instructing her to take the kids and go to her sister's house. Meanwhile, Julia is at the casino, making Howard's bet while trying to evade the goon, and everyone watches anxiously as the game unfolds. In a surprising turn of events, Howard's bet pays off, winning over $1 million. Filled with excitement, he dials Julia's number to share the news that they are about to enjoy a lavish lifestyle. Confident that he can settle their debts, Howard eagerly releases Arno and Phil from the vestibule, but in a shocking turn of events, Phil shoots Howard in the face, killing him instantly. Arno is left in disbelief as Phil and his accomplice start to rob the store, grabbing every piece of jewelry they can find. In a panic, Arno attempts to escape, but Phil shoots him down as well. Meanwhile, Julia walks out of the casino with the cash. Dinah decides to alert the authorities, and Howard lies bleeding on the floor. The camera zooms in on Howard, revealing the uncut gem hidden within him. In this way, movie ends here. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more interesting movie recaps.